Hi everyone, welcome and thanks for joining. It's 4 o'clock, so I think we're going to kick off and get started now. I'm Lauren, I'm one of the marketing officers, and I'm joined by James Edwards, International Sales Manager, and he is kindly taking us through the demo today. Before I hand over, there are just a few housekeeping things I want to cover with you guys. Just wanted to let you know that we are recording, so don't worry if you miss anything or if you want to watch this again. We'll be sending a link out in an email afterwards with a follow-up. We just ask if you could please keep questions for the Q&A box, and then any general queries, please leave them for the chat box, as it helps us differentiate at the end of the webinar when we come to answer any questions, which ones have already been just like general questions and which ones you still want to have answered. And also, just so you all are aware, you are muted, so don't worry about any background noise or any distractions or anything like that, because we can't hear you and no one else can either. I think that's probably everything from me. Just to make it clear again that we will be answering questions at the end of the webinar, but please feel free to add them in the Q&A box whenever you feel like throughout the presentation. But yeah, that's everything from me, so I'm going to hand over to James now.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Yes, good afternoon, everybody, or good morning, depending where you're joining us from. Yeah, today I plan to run through then a demo of OpenAthens for the library or a librarian or a research, whoever you may be, who might administer the account. I'll also just give a little bit of a background to OpenAthens as a company, just as a sort of a little intro as well before we jump into the demo. So to begin with, I'd like to start off with sort of the why, how, and what for OpenAthens. And so, you know, why did OpenAthens, sort of why did we come about? And so the purpose of OpenAthens was to remove those barriers to knowledge and connect people to information. And what we mean by a barrier, that could be something as simple as a login screen. It might be just a horrible experience of a way in which a user has to spend a lot of time and effort in order just to try and gain access to information. So we wanted to come around, and those barriers are out there. I'm sure you've come across them yourselves, and so we wanted to try and remove those where we can. So this is done by providing a sort of robust and reliable gateway between that subscription content that you're after and for those that need to access it. So it could be a student trying to access some research information. It could be a healthcare worker trying to understand the latest research on certain illnesses and things. So there's a lot of reasons why a user might need to access that content that is often behind a barrier. And so what did we end up with? So we've ended up with a single sign-on software that enables people to access this digital content. Now, single sign-on can mean various different things depending on where you'll kind of first hear about it. And so what I mean here by single sign-on is that your users will have one username and password that they will use to access all of the content provided to them. And most importantly there, they will also only have to log in that one time. So they only log in once, and then they can jump between all the different content during that research session. So at OpenAthens then, you know, hopefully this comes down, you'll see that we believe that accessing the subscription-based content should be fast, easy, and pain-free. So, you know, your users, the students, as we said, or healthcare, if they are there, the moment they need to access that content, you know, that's the moment you've got their attention. So we've got to make sure that, you know, you really maximize that and they're not distracted in any way, because if they can get to that content during that time, then they're going to stay engaged and hopefully go on to access more and more. And so you're going to see greater usage and have more and better, you know, and better, happier users as well. You know, we can get rid of all of that, you know, forgotten passwords. You know, we're all guilty of it. Sometimes we have a list somewhere saved of all the different passwords we might have. You think you know it. You know, you might have a password that you use for everything, but then some website you use for your shopping account or whatever, you might go back to it after 6 months of not using it, have it forgotten, and then in the end you just don't sign in because it's the process of renewing it and everything is just too, you know, too time consuming and annoying. And so that's where you lose that engagement, and that's the same for your users when they're trying to access your subscriptions, if there's all there and they have multiple usernames and passwords to remember. You know, it's also about removing, you know, that clunky or confusing software. You know, there's lots of different ways in which you might try and get people to it, but if it's not a user-friendly experience, again, they're just not going to be very engaged, and it's certainly not going to be fast and easy for them. And so essentially with all this, we're hoping to remove all of that to, put the information that's important in the right hands. And this will then enable them to go on and achieve great things. So, whatever that might be. So it could be getting a really good top grade at university. It could be saving, as far as perhaps saving someone's life out in the field as a medical profession, or just, uncovering that key important part in your project or your research project, whatever it might be, as easy and quickly as possible. And so all of that, you're going to have much happier users, and it's going to help, productivity across the board in many ways. So our value then, there's a number of things that we can bring to your organization. And I was kind of touched on this, is you're going to have those happy users. That better user experience, is going to make them feel more rewarded and achieve those greater things. Alongside that, you've also got the minimal admin. So with happier users, you're going to have less inquiries and queries and stuff and troubleshooting that you're going to have to manage. So that's freeing up your time. Also, the interface for OpenAthens, which I will show you in a moment, has many tools and stuff that make it really user-friendly for yourself. So you can do tasks that might at this time be taking you a long time to do, but with our tools, it makes them a lot quicker and easier. So freeing up your time as well as a librarian to go on and do great things. The peace of mind. So, we do not compromise on security in any way. It's a very secure method that we use, and you don't have to worry about, data, and security and that side of things. We will look after all of that as well for you. We can also provide statistics and insights. So we do collect data on your users to help you see how they're engaging with your content and help you to make more informed purchasing decisions as well. And it can also lead to then also proving the library's value to your organization. And I will show you our reporting module later in the demo and show you what some people are using those reports for, in order just to get more than just the, is this resource being used? You can really get into actually who's it being used by and what outcomes this could be leading to them and your organization. And essentially also in all of this, you're leaving the difficult stuff to us. So the landscape for authentication, and that is quite technical and can be quite difficult to understand, but we, as a fully hosted cloud hosted solution, we manage all of that part for you, and you don't have to worry about it. We leave the difficult, we handle the difficult stuff. And then also, we've got the scalability of a hosted product to help reach those demands as organizations change as well on those parts. So yes, OpenAthens as a product then. So, we kind of were introduced around the turn of the millennium, and since then we have grown to what we are now as OpenAthens, as a fully hosted solution. And there are now, over 4,000 organizations across the globe using OpenAthens in order to help their users gain access to content. This means there are millions and millions of users using OpenAthens, and there's very few countries that someone hasn't used OpenAthens actually from as a solution. We're not a sector specific, we are suited for anyone that needs access to content, essentially, or we can help them out in some way. So whether that be academic space, the medical, or even the corporate sector, and also public libraries as well. There's many industries that require a service like OpenAthens, as that library space, or should we say the e-resources, is often kind of not associated with the wider single sign-on or user experience that is sort of an enterprise level. So we as a product fit really nicely into that sector to help bridge that gap for IT and the library. So, I have touched on that, the authentication landscape can be a confusing world at times, and particularly if you're an end user as well, attempting to navigate journals, provider websites. I'll touch on it again in a moment with RA21, but you've probably experienced it yourself, or you've had users say, like, how do I log in here? What do I do here? And OpenAthens can be helping to make that process far more seamless. So our vision at OpenAthens is to provide the world's most user-friendly access management experience. And that's really because we believe that libraries matter so much, particularly in these times. If we're not helping to deliver library content in a way that makes sense to the end user, we quickly can become irrelevant, and the quality of our end users' research is then compromised. And that's, a really, important part that we've got to, make sure and fix. So I did just touch on it, but I'd like to bring it up, RA21. So I'm not sure if any of you have heard of this already or looked into it. So RA21 is the resource access for the 21st century. And it's an initiative that's come together, and it involves, publishers, libraries, and consumers. And essentially, what they've come to the conclusion is that IP no longer works as a way of recognition in today's distributed world. So you can go to ra21.org. We have been involved in these topics, and and it's very clear, and you might be experiencing this yourself, specifically right now, if you've been relying on IP up until the current pandemic. That IP it just clearly doesn't work once this whole remote access and remote working situation comes into play. And so this initiative will come about, and the first stage ended in June last year, and the first pilot phase, should we say. And yeah, the conclusion was that IP should be replaced by SAML authentication. So what I'm showing you here, and this is where it gets a bit technical, but I'm trying to keep it as simple as we can. OpenAthens is based on that SAML authentication method. It's kind of a federated way, if you like. So briefly just showing the difference here. As you can see with an IP, it can be more technical to set up. You might be having to manage it in-house as well, which comes with its own costs and problems. But what's happening with an IP is all your users, as they try to log in or get recognized for content, they all become an anonymous user, and to when they become passed over to that publisher site. And so IP was never meant to be used for this sort of purpose as a thing, and it's kind of worked to begin with. Whenever we were working on site, it was fine, and then it's been patched and gone with proxies as we've moved forward, but really it was never what it was there to do. So it is kind of a legacy technology and a workaround. Whereas the SAML handshake, what's that doing is it's providing a secure end-to-end user experience. They remain anonymous, but in terms of but they're still an individual. So the publisher can not only know who they are, but where they're from as well. And I'll show why this is an advantage, particularly for your end users as well during the demo. It's a lot simpler to set up, and it's a global standard, so it works, across the globe, and publishers who accept it, it's a working language. So a little bit then on the federation part. So I did touch on it there. So this is, that using that SAML technology allows for federations to work, and essentially what you're having there is OpenAthens is a standard-based, as I mentioned, SAML, and has a federation at the heart of everything we do. And the real benefit of a federation is stops all of this one-to-one connections you might have to be doing at the moment when you're with your subscription. So, for example, right now, if you had a subscription to, let's just say, ScienceDirect, and if they were to make a change, everyone who has a one-to-one connection with them will have to make that change in order to make that connection and the authentication recognition part works with them. So whether that's updating certificates or something like that, that's a lot of work that all the libraries and that they have to do, the librarians or the IT staff, whoever manages their systems, have to do. Whereas with a federation, luckily, and particularly the OpenAthens one, if that's changed, same change was done by ScienceDirect, we change it in the federation so that actually the IDP side, the library side, they don't actually have to make any changes on their end. So it's saving a lot of work and a lot of time for everyone. And it helps speed up time as well on that troubleshooting that I kind of touched on before. And you can also get rid of all the proxy configuration files and things like that. So we see the federations, there's many around the globe. OpenAthens is a global one though, and we have many sort of publishers, service providers, we might say, as part of our federation. So here we've just highlighted a few of the ones that you're probably aware of, you might have seen before. Again, as on that last slide, you could see there's over 1,000 that we can be working with. But there's also, as a solution, using that SAML technology protocol, it means we can work with a wide range of services outside of just the service providers in terms of content. So here's just a number of list of ones I'm showing as well, but we're not just limited to those journals and databases. We can connect to, for example, your wider directory systems to provide an even better single sign-on experience for your users, which I will demonstrate in a moment. But then also, yeah, we can attach to your virtual learning environments or any other systems out there that your users might have to log into separately. Let's see if we can bring them into the OpenAthens experience for them to open up that single sign-on experience for them. So that's then my initial introduction into OpenAthens. Now we're going to jump in and go into a demo. What I'm going to first do is show you the end user's experience for OpenAthens. And then after that, we're going to jump in and show the admin area and some of the tools and features available to the library or who would ever administer the account. So bear with me right now as I close this down. And I'm just going to bring up my internet. Bear with me still. Okay, so hopefully you will in a moment see the login screen for the Clinical Knowledge Network. It has a picture of a doctor or a nurse on the front. So hopefully you can all see that. So what I'm going to show you now is, yes, the end user. And for that, I'm going to use a customer of ours who are very kind enough to allow us to demonstrate their environment. So it's the Clinical Knowledge Network, and they're a healthcare provider in Australia. So as I'm based here in the UK, so this is clearly going to be an off-site demonstration. But when it comes to OpenAthens, really, we're removing that what's on-site and what's off-site. It's always the same experience for your users, no matter where they're based. Now, the one key part to OpenAthens is logging in. Now, for OpenAthens to work, your users will have to log in at some stage. There are two ways in which OpenAthens we can do that login part. So essentially you can use OpenAthens as your directory, which means that you will be creating OpenAthens accounts for your users. That I'd say is a bit more legacy of a way of using it, but that is what CKN currently still have, and it is easy for some librarians to do that. So I have been created this username and password from the administrator at CKN. The other option for OpenAthens is that we connect to your existing directory, and I'll kind of touch on this as well a bit later. And the real benefit of that is your users don't have to remember a new username and password. They will use their existing institutional's username and password, and we can plug in with your enterprise SSO there as well. So it would be a screen they're used to and a username and password they're used to as well. I'll show on that in a moment though, but for now, just to show you, this has been given to me, my username and password, and if I click login, again, you're not seeing OpenAthens here. This is CKN's own page, and they've embedded this login part to it. But if I click login, it will now log me in. My OpenAthens session, it's like a token or a cookie, if you like, will be in this browser now, and it will stay open for up to 8 hours. And so, yeah, I can now access all of the content provided to me by CKN. Again, this is CKN's own library page. It's not anything OpenAthens. You don't see OpenAthens as an end user so much. Here they've just got links to their various databases. They've also got a discovery service. So I'm just going to show, as a general user experience, how they might be trying to access the content. So in this case here, I'm going to use the discovery service that they've embedded on their page. In this case here, it is EBSCO's discovery service, EDS, but we work, as I showed you earlier in that slide, with a wide range of other library services that work to help provide that single sign-on experience. Not here to describe how a discovery service works, but it's search for basic content related to my term, to my text word there. And in this case here, I find an article that's going to sit outside of that EDS service. So in this case here, I can find this, this article at Clinical Key. So already now, you know, I haven't had to sign in from that first time, didn't have to sign into EDS as a service. A user probably wouldn't even know they're using OpenAthens still at this moment. If the keen-eyed ones of you, the ones who want to see something from OpenAthens happening, if you watch the URL at the top here, when I click this link, you'll see an OpenAthens link part happen and the authentication work. But that is essentially all you're going to see from an OpenAthens perspective as an end user. So there we go. Very quickly, it did it. It did that OpenAthens. It went to Elsevier and said, did that authentication and did the part saying who I was, where I'm from. Yep, they're okay. They can have access to this article. And here we go. I've got access to that full text article. I will also love to point out right here now that in the top right-hand corner, you'll see that I've also been logged into my own personal account. So earlier when we talked on that IP bit and how they become an anonymous user as everyone, whereas SAML passes that information at sort of two-way transparency, it allows us to work with personalization where it's offered on publisher sites. So not only now, if I was using a proxy system, I would have had to have logged in to my own account. I've actually been authenticated into that as well. And this means your users can have their saved searches, their search history, and they can, some of them offer saved content. Every publisher's page is different, and that may be a service they offer, it may not be, but where it is, OpenAthens can work with that to improve that user experience. And it is good because, I mean, if a user has logged in before and they think they've got all that, they may come to the website again and start searching and doing stuff and realize they didn't log in, and all of that past searches that they did wouldn't have been saved or anything, and so they might have lost some interesting content that they came across. But we just help sure that they don't have to worry about that, and we make it as seamless for them as possible. And now I'm just going to jump to some other pages just to show, basically going to a number of different sites to show how I don't have to log in. So, click the wrong bit, there we go, and here we are. So, yeah, again, every publisher is going to be different. In this case here, Toxins, you can see I've been logged in. They know where I'm from, but they don't offer that personalization touch that Clinical Key did. But I've, you know, been authenticated and didn't have to put in any credentials or anything to get in there. Dynamed, again, if I click here, you can see my account. Now I haven't set up an account here, so this is kind of what they know me as on this part, but you can see I'm logged in, and I could search through that database there for any content provided to me. Micromedic, again, they don't know branding or anything to say where I'm from or anything like that, but you can see I'm logged in. It says log out in the top right-hand corner up here. So maybe a bit more of a basic database on that side. And then minsonline, again, here we go at the top there. You can see I've been logged in. I'm just a default user here, but they know where I'm from. I've got access to the content on there. So yeah, so that's then, you know, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 different sites. No need to log into any of them because I have that session running in the browser. And that's coming from a library page where, you know, you'd hope your users would usually go start their journey. It makes it real simple for them. You know, they log in at some point to get there, whether that be to your institutional's intranet or somewhere, if they've got that directory connection, or as CKN have, they actually have a login screen before it. I've logged in and I've gained access to all that content. No need to log in again. Nice and seamless. Obviously, they're going to find content in other ways. So if I was, for example, to go via Google and let's go ScienceDirect, I've been there before. I know CKN have content for me from there. As I'm not coming from the library page, it's not an OpenAthens link, if you like. So at this stage, ScienceDirect, it doesn't know who I am, where I'm from. So I'm going to have to click sign in. And this is where it does get a little bit confusing with all the different options out there. But usually you're going to have some sort of institutional login of some option. If it's got OpenAthens, that's great. You'll see if I click on this, it will pick up my OpenAthens token that's in the browser, my session, and it will actually log me in without having to put any credentials in. So there you go. They offer that personalization in the top right there. You can see I've been logged into my account, and yeah, I'm free to go search within ScienceDirect. You might at that point be asked to search for your institution, and then you search for it, click, and then it will do that part. So that's a little extra stage that sometimes will happen. And just to show you, for example, if I was not logged in already, so I'm just going to show you, so let's go to Cargo here. So now let's pretend I haven't logged in yet. This is the very first thing I'm going to do. Got it. I'm going to click login, and I haven't got a session running, and I'm going to be from a different place this time. So institutional login. There we go. Often there's the branded logo in some way. I now click login, and for this time I'm going to pretend I'm going to be a student from Reading University. So if I go Reading, University of Reading, that's where I'm from. I click on here, and it will take me to my institutional login page. So your users will go, oh, I know this page. I know what credentials I need to enter here. They will log in, and then it will take me back to Karga, the publisher. So I don't have an account at Reading University, but it's just to show you as a user, if that's the very first thing they do, that's what the kind of experience would be for them. Hopefully nice and familiar, just to get them logged in that first time, and then it's seamless from then on. So yeah, that's everything that I want to show you around the end user. Ideally, they don't really need to know they're using OpenAthens. It's kind of nice that way. But yeah, at times it can be a little helpful. But you know, it's as you hope, it's not that exciting for them. It's just nice, easy, and seamless. And yeah, making them get access to the content as easily as possible. There's nothing to install on their systems or worry about in that way. It's just, yeah, all they need to access content is a internet connection and a browser, and yeah, and away they go. So now I'm going to close that down, and now we're going to jump in and show you the administration area, so an actual OpenAthens account. So bear with me a moment whilst I log in. So again, OpenAthens as a service, it is fully hosted. So, you know, for IT side, there's nothing to install locally or manage and run. So that's saving you cost and time. It's fully supported. So should you have any queries, then, you know, you can reach out to our support desk and our support team, and we can help that with the product and those issues. There's also, you know, there's no worry about updates. Every time you log in, you will have the most up-to-date version of OpenAthens. So bear with me a moment whilst I just log in. And yeah, so that again, that's saving time and hassle that maybe currently you're running something in-house, and you know, whenever something goes down, you're having to fix it. You know, as a hosted solution, there's a lot of benefits that come. That the fact that you can now take that off and pass it on, and freeing up your time to do other things more relevant than just upkeeping or keeping systems live. So let me just share my screen again. Perfect. So hopefully now you can see the administration area for OpenAthens. So I've brought up two accounts here. I've got a demo account, which we can kind of play around in a little bit. And then I'll also, for the statistics side, I will show you the clinical knowledge network that I just demoed earlier, just so you can maybe kind of see how those statistics will come through. So as OpenAthens goes, you know, if you were to come towards OpenAthens and choose OpenAthens, there's a number of steps you're going to go through to get the account up and running. I'll guide you through these now very briefly. There is a whole implementation specialist that will get applied to you and your account to help you through the setup process. And I can share that all afterwards with our onboarding guide. You can find it online if you really want to know the actual processes to setting up OpenAthens. But for now, I'm just going to show you the kind of key parts of that. So the first bit you're going to want to do is put your users into the system. And as I touched on earlier, there are two ways you can do that. You can connect to an existing directory, or you can add them into the system yourself sort of in a manual way and create them OpenAthens accounts. I would say 90% of our systems now are using that connection way to another existing directory. The reasons for that is, yeah, there's no duplication of you having to, for example, your users having an account created for them for the institution, and then the librarian having to create an account for them for the library. Again, it's time, it's duplication of work. So this directory connection works better. And yeah, your users only have that one username and password to use, and it provides a true single sign-on experience. So if I go to the management tab here, just to show you how that connection's done, we go management, connections, and we've got local authentication. And if I click add, a number of sort of preset connectors come up. This covers a wide range. I mean, ADFS is the sort of Microsoft. Now we're looking at more of the Azure way. We can use LDAP if required, and some other ones here. But really, the underlying technology in most of this is SAML 2.0, and that's how it's going to work. And so there are many directories out there we can work with as long as they use that technology. And it is a global standard, so most of them will in some way. Not going to set one up here, but you would click that, configure. Basically, it's about sharing metadata. There's a few things to go through there. That is where IT will be involved in the setup process, and that's about their only involvement. Really, that's necessary. It's just to make that connection. It's very simple. It can be done either just via emails back and forth, or over a quick 15-minute phone call if the right people are on. So yeah, so once that connection is up and running, it will look similar to something like this. And just one thing I'd like to bring to your attention here is, you've got to think about, it's a good time to think about attributes. And so what we mean by attributes is information that you might have on your users outside of the normal, for example, first name, last name, email address that's here. You might, if you're an institution, an academic institution, have the course they're studying, the department, the faculty, in other organizations, it might be their job role, a team member they are, their global, where they are globally. If you have that information and you can release it to us, it really enables you to really get into the granular stuff of OpenAthens. And yeah, so you can start grouping your users together, and I'll touch on why that's really handy a bit later. And by doing it with this connection, you can make a whole process really automated, making it a lot simpler and easier for yourself. So that's one of those connections. When that connection is live, once your users start logging into OpenAthens, if you go to accounts and list, so once they start using the OpenAthens service, they will start appearing within whatever you call the directory here. So we've got these 7 names here. We don't just take the whole directory and plonk it into OpenAthens. It is only those that are actually going to use the service that will appear within OpenAthens side. As I mentioned, this will all be controlled at whoever handles the directory centrally. So if I click on one of these accounts here, you can see I can't actually change any of this information. That's all managed centrally. So it's freeing up your time. You don't have to worry if someone was to leave your organization. You don't have to go, oh, I forgot to delete their OpenAthens account. It doesn't matter. Once they've left that directory, that connection part, they will also no longer have an OpenAthens access either. So yeah, it's things less for you to worry about on that side. One thing you can do with an account, you can disable it and delete it, and that is within OpenAthens. So it doesn't affect them institutionally wide, but just for the OpenAthens and the resources it will. So that can help if you think there's account misuse going on or anything like that. You can come in here and just quickly disable an account nice and simply. What you can do here though is that you can sort of manually assign them to permission sets if you wanted. So this can be done automatically, again, if you've got all that connection part set up, but you can also do it manually. And what we mean by permission sets is content that you don't want accessible by everybody. So this is a really handy way in which you can provide, unique content to a specific group of users. So it could be for, a specific course they need access, but you can't afford or you don't want to pay for a university or institution-wide access. You want it for just 200 users, and then you can make a permission set. So let's say it was ScienceDirect. You could say, right, this user can have access to ScienceDirect, and no one else outside of that who isn't in that permission set would have access to it. So it's a really clever way there of restricting access to certain content to allow you to provide it to those who need it, and also to help you save costs where required and necessary. And you can have as many permission sets as you want. This is a demo account, so there's lots of ones that are being set up, and I'll show you how simple it is to set those up, create them in a moment. So that is making that directory connection, and that's how those users are managed there. Really, you're taking away that user management out of the library there, and it's stuck with usually IT who will manage the directory. Any changes in names and stuff, for example, forgotten passwords, you don't longer have to worry about that. That will be all managed centrally. The other option, as I said, like CKNUs, is that you actually do create OpenAthens accounts. So that can be done using our accounts, add personal account here. This just creates a wizard where if you need to create an account, you just follow this through. You can give expiry dates, and yeah, you can put in those permission sets, what they're allowed access to, and things like that. So there's lots of options there as you create that account for them. And at the end, it will just send that user an email with an activation link to say, hey, activate your account, much like we used to with sort of a lot of systems these days. And then they activate their account, set their password, and away they go. So that's really handy if you've got walk-in people coming into your library and you want to provide them access. Maybe you have people who are coming in on short-term placements and they won't be in your institutional directory, or because this can work alongside the connection. You don't have to have one or the other. You can have both running together. That's not a problem. So yeah, sometimes it's an added use for this. If you're using this as your sole directory for OpenAthens, we do also have a bulk upload tool. So in this case here, you would just download a template and you can upload, thousands of users in one go into the system. So it'll all send them all those emails out for you, and all of the users will activate their account. So if you are using it for hundreds or thousands of users, that bulk upload is really handy. And you can modify and delete accounts simply using that function as well. And they will all be listed, any accounts you create that way. They list here under personal, and yeah, that's a way of which you can separate them out when you're doing that. The other options is you can create access accounts. So these could be accounts that you want to share out, so you can create them and so they're there, and then you can hand them out to people. So rather than having to create one individually, if you have a small library where maybe you have a few that you want to share, you can create these access accounts and do that as well. So yeah, there's a number of different ways in which you can use our accounts creation. So that's first bit. Now you've got your users in the system and they're starting to appear and they're starting to log into OpenAthens. Obviously now they need to have that content to access. So for that, we've got the resources and the catalog here. And this is where you will now add the subscriptions to your account. During the setup, we would do this as much for you as we can. We will contact the publishers, because what's involved is we need to tell them your subscriptions and the people you subscribe to that you're moving to OpenAthens, and that they will now need to accept OpenAthens as the authentication method. So yeah, we'll do as much of that for you as we can. As you can see here, some of these will say proxied underneath. So as much as the move to federation is the way that SAML is going to be, that's going to be a wave as publishers, and if you move that way, there are still a number of service providers and publishers that don't accept that as a form of authentication at the moment. They're still using IP and proxy. So OpenAthens does come with our own managed proxy system, and that's so we can work with a huge number of publishers out there. So we should be able to work with pretty much everyone that you currently are subscribing to. And there's no differentiation in the user experience. As you saw earlier when I did that demo, some of those were proxy resources, some of them were SAML, and I see, you don't need to know as an end user. We will just manage that for you. And just in here, it will just tell you basically which ones are proxied and which ones are not, just for your own reference. So then let's just say, for example, you wanted to subscribe to 123 library. You would reach out to them and you would say, "Hi, I'd like to do a subscription." You would arrange all the content and the subscription contract with them. And you would tell them you're using OpenAthens, and they would ask you for your OpenAthens information. And once they have that and they say, "Yep, that's all done," you would just come in here, click allocate. And then you would allocate it to, in this case here, we've got lots of permission sets set up. Many institutions just have one and everyone's allowed access to all their content. So in that case here, you would just have subscriptions tick. But if you do want to restrict access to it, you can pick which groups of users have access to that content. So once that's allocated, it will then sit here. So really nice and simple that, there's not coding or anything to do or managing all that, it's literally coming in here and it's simply a simple thing of clicking a button to allocate the account, and that will now be live for your users and the authentication piece will be happening. We can set up custom resources as well. So these are for resources and services that they might be logging into that aren't currently using your proxy, or they might just be behind a login barrier, we could look to bring those in as a resource into the OpenAthens to widen that SSO experience, the single sign-on experience for your users. And yeah, so you can see which ones are allocated to your account, and yeah, you can use our catalog to search for any that you might be looking to subscribe to in the future. Also from here, I mentioned that permission sets creating. So, you know, we've got a number of set up here already. If you wanted a new one, you would just, give it a name, and then you would just add the resources that are to that group, and then also add the users to it as well. We can look at ways of automating that using the user attributes. But yeah, the tools and functions are in here to create, and you see many have been created on this demo account. Some of you might be used to using prefixes with proxy links and things like that. So again, with OpenAthens, as you saw when I went via Google to ScienceDirect, it doesn't automatically just kick in and authenticate. It has to be an OpenAthens link in order for that authentication piece to happen. We have a link generator, so it's really nice and simple to use. You basically essentially enter the URL that you want to authenticate users to, and then you would generate that link. So that is one of the setup processes that can take a bit of time, where you need to update the links on your pages. There are a number of systems out there where it kind of does it for you, for like EDS and things. They can make that automated kind of process. But yeah, if you have like a list on one page, you will need to update the links on there. Really, though, what's really handy is we've made this redirector link generator. We've made it public facing, and so that is what the reason for that behind is we saw that, for example, if a lecturer wants to share content that they found or come across, or a researcher wants to share it with their wider team, they might just copy and paste that URL that they're on in the page and then send it out. And obviously it's behind a barrier. So if the users try to access it, it's going to say it doesn't exist. You need to log in, and then they log in, and then they appear at a home page. They don't actually appear to the article that was being shared. So with this being public facing, and you can instruct them just share it, where really essentially they just search for their organization. Let's jump in to show you it actually. So if I go to OpenAthens.net, we've got here it is, the link generator. So if I was at Clinical Knowledge Network, I would search for my institution here, if I was, and I wanted to share something, and then I would paste in the article I want to share into this bar here, and it would generate that link for me to then share with my colleagues. And that means it will authenticate the users to it, providing that much more seamless journey for them. So really good way of sharing content there. And anyone can do that in your organization. So now that's, you've updated your links. OpenAthens will now be running, working, and your users will be accessing your content. So after that, you're going to want to see the statistics and see how that usage is going. For that, we have our statistics module. So it's accessible from the admin area. And if I go to reporting here, this is just a nice overview. So this is the Clinical Knowledge Network that I demoed earlier. So this is where you can see their usage. As you can expect, it's Australia based. Most of it's in Australia, but there's also usage around the globe here. This is quite a small amount of accounts. There's only 100 in this level, but I'll show you the whole organization in a moment. But yeah, so it just gives you a good idea of where your users are accessing your content from. Could show you the impact your library has globally, which for some institutions may be unknown at this present time. See the total amount of accounts that are using OpenAthens and your total usage over 7 days, and top resources as well. So top resources is really popular. So if we jump in here, we can see, and let me just tidy this up a little bit. As you can see, it's very customizable. Let's look at the whole month of May. So you can see, you can adjust it looking at the specifics you want to. So monthly, yearly, you can look at the granularity, you can look at it daily, weekly, or hourly. So this is just breaking down. So it's listed the popular resource at the top. Let's just tidy this up. And so we're looking at Australian Medicine's Handbook. So yeah, really handy to see the total usage going on here. There are these two lines, and the dotted line is what we call unique. And so by unique, we mean actual users. So this is where you can really start getting the granularity out of who's accessing your content. So not only on Monday, the 11th, was there 447 total accesses to this resource, but it was done by 244 users. So you know they've got users accessing that site multiple times. And that's really helpful because it can sometimes what we call super users might skew your actual usage of your resources. So you might think one's really popular and oh, everyone's using this. Using OpenAthens, you can actually go, oh no, it's not used by everyone. It's used by a real small number of users. And then, yeah, using that information, you go, right, so if we were to lose this content, it's only going to affect them. It's not going to affect everybody if you had to make those decisions. Not to say you would have to do that, because using OpenAthens and our permission sets, you could go, right, actually, we have got an institutional wide subscription for that content, but it is only this college, this department, this group of users that are accessing it. So now let me negotiate a subscription for, say, only 100 users, 10 users, and using OpenAthens permission sets, you know you're not going to break that contract. You can restrict it to just those ones. So again, allowing you to offer the same content, but saving money to maybe offer more unique content when required. So that's, yeah, looking at that, like I say, you can break down via those attributes and those groups I touched on earlier, that information you may want to release to us or let us know. So CKN, they have their users in job roles. So again, let me just tidy this up. You've got nurse and midwives here and pharmacists, and you can see how those different groups of users are accessing your resources. And you can jump in, so that's looking at all your resources, but you could jump to, so as we know it's popular, let's look at a specific resource. So in this case here, actually it's the pharmacists and that use this resource the most, and the nurse and midwives, although they were your heaviest users of your content, they don't actually use this article, this database that much. So already there you're starting to get these ideas of actually not just how much your content's being used, but who's using it and perhaps why they're using it. You could use it to help track engagement. So you might see that, you know, there's certain content that's not being used very much. Is that because it's not visible on your website? Is it not because it's available to them? Or, you know, is it because it's hidden behind some other login screens or behind, you know, on a different page where they're just not accessing it? So maybe you need to bring it forward. You might send out emails to promote a certain article, and you could see if there's an uptake. And if there's an uptake, you know that people are you're getting your emails and they're listening and they're reading them, so you can see how impactful your messages are to the users. And you might even look at sort of saying, you know, oh, there's really low engagement from certain types of users. Reach out to them and say, do they need training? Do they need help with their studying or anything like that? So it's helping you to boost that engagement out from the library and really show the value it can bring to the organization. All these reports can be saved and downloaded, so you can take that data away and present it in your own way as well. So yeah, you can have them scheduled so that they will appear in your inbox, say monthly or weekly, however often you want to see a specific report. So there's no need to come in here and manage all of that. So I've just seen the time now. I want to make sure we've got some time for questions. Now that's everything I did kind of want to show you as a kind of a quick introduction to OpenAthens. So we've done how, you know, you kind of put the users in, add the resources and use the statistics and create links, which are kind of the key parts to making it all work. And then you saw on the end user demo as well. So yeah, so now I'm going to sort of jump over and see if we've had any questions come in. And yeah, I'm happy to answer them where I can.
We do have two questions. The first one is from Shalini, and she has just said, I heard only one admin user per site. If there are two of us that need to manage the admin, can we share the password, or is it possible to have two admins?
So yeah, that's obviously you've heard right there. Unfortunately, at the moment, there is just one admin username and password to access the administration area. What I will say around that, though, is that yes, in those institutions, we do say you would have to share that login at the present stage. We are looking to change that though, to open that up into you can have more than one. But yeah, at the moment you would just share it. There is a second factor authentication just to make it a little bit more secure, and that is IP. But again, we'll work with you on that just to make that as safe as well for you.
Cool. And Shalini has also asked, can you also please discuss how to gather usage data for each database/resource?
So yeah, hopefully I'll just take this. So what we measure here, so we are different to sort of, for example, counter reports or anything like that. What we are measuring is the authentication, the log. So the moment we authenticate a user to a resource, that's what we log. And so hopefully, maybe, I don't know when the question came in, maybe now, as I've shown our reporting here, you can see how we've logged this. And so at the moment I'm using by those job roles. We've logged every time a user has access to a resource via that job role here. We don't track them once they've authenticated to a publisher site. We don't see how much they've downloaded or anything like that. We just log that authentication piece, but we can show you actually who that user was.
No, I think that one was covered. It just came in a little bit earlier. We have one from Alicia as well, who says, so essentially you can pull most or all of your database stats from one place.
Yes, exactly. Yes, so they will all be all the OpenAthens databases that are working and using OpenAthens. You can all see them here. So yes, at the moment that was looking at all resources, but if you see here, all of CKNs are listed here for me to search and have a look at individually.
Okay. Alicia's also added, but you cannot find full text usage.
No, so yes, we can't look at the individual looking at a full text. That, as I say, once we've handed the user to the publisher and done that authentication piece, we no longer are tracking them.
Okay. Just going to wait for a few more questions if anybody has any. One's just come up that says, can we see usage breakdown by international students or for other attributes?
Yes, definitely. So, I mean, I've just used an example, demo customer here, but really any attribute you release to us, you can put a report on that. So if you do, for example, have an attribute that says they are international, then you can see the international usage of your resources. You can be as granular and specific as you want as that. That's up to you. It's just about you having that information at hand.
Mm-hmm. Just give a couple of minutes just to see if any more questions come in. We have one from Steve who's just asked, can you release attributes per resource? I think that's supposed to say per resource.
Yes. So there's attributes you release to us, and then there are attributes you will release to the publisher. So some publishers do require certain attributes, and you can control, yes, what is passed on to them, but what is also just stuck and stays with OpenAthens. So yeah, here you've got job role, and I can look at that attribute and how they've accessed specific resources as well, but that doesn't, that's done via OpenAthens. So yeah, let's just go back to Australian, as I know it's popular. You can see how those attributes access that resource.
We have one from Anita who's just said, can you explain or show the part where users can access e-resources on our institution shared/institution open drive?
Sorry, can you repeat the question a moment?
She just asked, can you explain or show the part where users can access e-resources on institution shared or open drives?
So yeah, I mean, essentially what happened there. So obviously, if it's an institution and on a SharePoint, I imagine they would, or OneDrive, they would have to log in to that patch. So once they've logged in, if we're connected to your directory, that's the OpenAthens part will start, and then if they click a link, they will just gain access to the content. I might have to take that offside and we can have another separate call with yourself and look at your current system and how your users are accessing it, and then I can show you how OpenAthens would change that. It's probably the best way on that part. From an end user point, it's really making it as seamless and as simple as possible.
We have one from Judith, and it is just, if a user has more than one role, like faculty, librarian, administrator, does that usage get counted 3 times or just once per usage incident?
So yes, you can break it down into the different breakdowns. You can have one group and then a group within that as well. And our CKN don't have that, so I can't demonstrate that, but I will happily, send on some information. So you could have, as you say, have faculty and then maybe course within faculty if you have those attributes on them. Perfect.
We have another one that just says, if I am tracking usage for video streaming, how do I choose stats for total visits or videos downloaded?
So yeah, total usage, obviously, again, we'll only be logging the authentication piece. So if you wanted the actual downloaded and the actual how each content, each video that's looked at, you may have to talk to the publisher directly for those. We will just show you how many people have access to the site.
Mm-hmm. And we have one more from Steve, who's just said, can you mix Athens accounts with LDAP/AD?
Yes, so I can quickly show you that. So we do offer LDAP, but yeah, so just depending on how you're going here, if you're talking about having 2 connections and bringing that information together as one, we can't currently offer that. I say currently, maybe it's something that we're hoping to develop down the line, but at the moment you would have to either have an LDAP connection or a connection to your AD. It's kind of one or the other at that stage for that.
Hopefully that's answered that one as well. Just going to give a couple more minutes again for any questions, but probably aim for about 5 p.m. then as the cutoff point for any more questions. If not a little bit earlier, if no one else has anything. So James's contact email is on the screen now, just for everyone to see. I think this will be our last question. We just have one from Noreen, who said, if my dashboard shows 2 not activated accounts, but I click on one and see this and click on this and see more, why is this? Recent activity shows these accounts are activated.
I'm not so sure. That might have to be taken up then by the support team. I just have to see that at hand for that. But yeah, we will certainly follow up with that and get that checked out for you.
Okay, cool, perfect. Right, okay, I think that's everything, guys. So thank you very much for attending. You will obviously receive the recording with a follow-up email later on this week. And yeah, any questions, then please let us know. And for the 2 that are in the chat box, we'll get back to you with a few answers for those ones. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.